Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 393 of Monster Kid Radio, the podcast devoted to the classic and sometimes not so classic genre cinema of yesteryear. I'm Derek M. Cook, your writer, host, producer, and the man who is incredibly sorry that the show is running a little late this week. As I mentioned on last week's show, I ended up traveling on November 1st, and I'm actually away from home base right now. I'm recording this the evening of November 2nd. Strike that. I'm sorry. Yesterday was October 32nd. Today is October 33rd, and I am recording from, well, an undisclosed location, which means I don't have everything with me. I'm actually recording this on my Zoom portable recorder instead of my home studio. Hopefully it's going to work out okay. I don't have all of my assets, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you now that there are going to be spoilers when I talk about the movie The Beach Girls and the Monster with my friend Joan Kohoutek. There are spoilers. Heads up, you've been warned. I don't have the little bit where the count comes in and warns you about spoilers, so I'm telling you now. You might even say there's a spoiler or two during Kenny's Famous Monsters of Filmland segment as well, where he talks about how this film was represented in the magazine Famous Monsters of Filmland, or specifically Monster World, but he'll talk to you about that here later on in the show. We're also going to talk about Karen's novel, The Jack-O-Lantern Box. Trust me, it's a good one. Now, because I was traveling, we had to record the feedback section a little differently as well, and that you're going to hear at the end of the show. It's a shorter segment than normal, but Brenda did join me to record the feedback, so you're going to get that in this episode as well. And of course, we'll end the show with the music that you're hearing now. It's the song More Fumes from the band The Undead Bureaucrats. They are a surf band based out of Ottawa, Ontario. It's off their album Expedition Earth that came out last month. They gave us permission to play the music here on the show. I think you're going to dig it, and I hope you dig the rest of this episode, which we're going to get to right after this.
In January of 1974, the American Broadcasting Company brought forth on this continent a new sitcom, conceived by Gary Marshall and dedicated to the proposition that the 1950s were awesome. That sitcom was, of course, Happy Days. It ran for 10 years and 255 episodes, casting a long shadow across American popular culture. Week after week, millions thrilled to the adventures of Richie, Fonzie, Joni, Potsy, Ralph Mouth, and the whole gang from Milwaukee. Hello, friends. I'm Joe, and I'm half of the broadcasting team behind These Days Are Ours, a podcast dedicated to all things Happy Days. Together with my co-host Emily, we'll be exploring the series episode by episode, breaking down the themes and telling you what it all means. You can join us on this journey by visiting thesedaysareours.libsyn.com. Just like the original Happy Days, we'll have new episodes every Tuesday. Be there or be square.
There's an enemy spy at large, an invisible man.
It's amazing. Oh, you will be of great help to us.
Who is this terrifying Phantom Commando? What is his amazing mission? See The Invisible Agent, suggested by H.G. Wells' Invisible Man, starring Ilona Massey and Jon Hall, with Peter Lorre, Sir Cedric Hardwicke, J. Edward Bromberg, Albert Basserman, in the most amazing story of our times.
Stop! Steady now. Don't let him get away.
Gesundheit. Who is there?
How did you know I was going to England?
I didn't, but...
So the trap was all set, eh?
Oh, Frank, how can you talk like that?
Oh! Well, what's this? It's full of hooks. Oh, they're tearing into me.
Hey, what are you looking for under a tombstone in broad daylight?
Shh! You'll scare her away.
Scare her away? Who? What? What can you scare away here in a cemetery?
My ghoul friend. She's the ghost in the invisible bikini.
What are you putting me on? Herbie, I know you're broad-minded, but this is ridiculous.
No, I'm serious. And you should see her since she traded her bedsheet for a bikini.
Boy, you must enjoy looking around for a real nothing broad.
It's really just that American International is inviting everyone out to the graveyard for a blood-curdling blast with the ghost in the invisible bikini to see Tommy Kirk, Deborah Wally, Aaron Kincaid, Harvey Lembeck and Jesse White with Nancy Sinatra, and guest stars Basil Rathbone, Boris Karloff, and Susan Hart in The Ghost in the Invisible Bikini in Pathé Color and Panavision.
Now, you would have to get commercial. Now you scared her away. Ooh.
Hello, Monster Kid Radioheads. This is Kenny with another look at our movie for today in Famous Monsters. The movie, the not-so-classic Beach Girls and the Monster, was featured in a short 2-page article in Monster World number 10. Last week we looked at Monster World, a sister magazine of Famous Monsters, basically a copy which was placed into the Famous Monster numbering. Monster World 1 through 10 became Famous Monsters 70 through 79. So we're looking at Monster World number 10, which was actually became Famous Monsters number 79. And that was released in September of 1966. The first page featured the producer's concept drawing of the monster with the caption, "If you are scared to death, it will surf you right." The second page has 2 photos and this description. Remember the monster of Piedras Blancas? The flesh eaters? The drawling terror? That was the Texas version of the crawling terror. Now, in the tradition of Horror of Party Beach comes the surf terror. Originally titled The Invisible Monster, this comes to the screen with Jon Hall, once seen in The Invisible Man's Revenge. In this picture, Jon is very visible. His victims are divisible, pronounced die visible. They visibly die like flies because Jon kills them, and not with kindness. He's a nice guy and part of the time, but for reasons you'll discover when you see the picture, he goes out of his mind every now and then. And when he does, someone goes out of this world permanently. Jon Hall is an oceanographer named Otto who is having a lot of strife with his wife. This causes him to act pretty peculiar. Like Crazy Otto, at first, he plans just to scare a few people, but then, whoops, we promise not to reveal too much of the plot. However, we can show you something exclusive, the producer's own concept of the demon from the ocean depths. Hey, that sounds like a hot horror title, The Demon from the Ocean Steps. There's a rock and growl musical number in the pic called Monster from the Surf. And as was done, if we remember correctly, in I Was a Teenage Frankenstein and War of the Colossal Beast, there is a brief sequence in color. But to see the color sequence, you'll have to catch the theatrical showing of the film, which is known as Beach Girls and the Monster. On TV, it'll be Surf Terror. What is the mystery of the sea? As J.B. Jones said to the seasick sea serpent, "It's too deep for me. If you like surfing, singing, and sinister doings, with a lurking monster to look at, make no error, Surf Terror will give you that from the sweet foam feeling." Other classics featured in Monster World number 10 include Hammer Films' The Reptile, who had a picture on the cover, and Dracula, Prince of Darkness, The Ghost in the Invisible Bikini, the Batman TV series, and an article about Lon Chaney Sr. Just like Monster Kid Radio, FM covered the classic and not so classic, like this Cheese Fest, Beach Girls, and the Monster.
Monster Kid Radio listeners, the way I normally find people to ask to be on the show is, they'll mention a movie or they're on a podcast and they talk about a movie or they write about a particular movie. The person that I have on the show this week is somebody that I met online through Facebook because she's a fellow Robert E. Howard fan. Which, wow, that's great. I mean, I talk about Robert E. Howard here on the show quite a bit, and it turns out she's an award winner. She won the Harkonnen Award
this year? I won the Sumerian.
No, the Sumerian
this year.
The Sumerian, excuse me. Yeah. For your essay, Queen by Fire and Steel and Slaughter, Paulette's Hymn, which was published on an Underwood number 5 blog. I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes to that. The writer of that, the guest this week, the person you just heard, is Joan Kohoutek. Karen, how's it going?
Pretty good. My cat's making a little noise here, but I think that'll be fine. He has a lot to say about classic horror as well.
We're very cat-friendly here. My cat Wednesday may end up piping in here in a little bit, so totally understand and totally acceptable. So like I said, I found Karen because I saw that she won this award, and it's like, I wonder if she's on Facebook, because that's awesome. And she was, and I reached out and we became Facebook friends. And then the other day, she mentions a monster movie that I personally love, but not a lot of people do. The Beach Girls and the Monster. And I knew I had to have her on the show.
Yes, it's actually a movie. I know how I heard of it, and I vividly remember the first time I saw it. And I did want to give a quick shout out.
Yeah.
I heard about it thanks to Tim Lucas's late lamented Video Watchdog magazine.
Oh, okay.
Which was a huge kind of source for me for many years, and it's finally defunct. I believe he retired, which is kind of sad, and there's amazing scholarship in it, so I'm really hoping that it doesn't get lost over time. You know, as print magazines, once they go out of print, they kind of sometimes lose their luster. But it was a very good magazine. And I had read a review of it, and I was like, this is a crazy, crazy sounding movie, and I have to see it. And I ended up visiting my parents, and I took some videotapes that I had taped off of late night kind of AMC, TCM, when they were doing a lot of that kind of stuff. And so I watched it on a double feature with White Zombie.
Oh, wow.
So I did Beach Girls and the Monster and then White Zombie. And I'd never seen either of them before. And it was a great sway to watch both of them. I was like, these movies have nothing in common.
So that's quite a different double feature, yeah.
Yes. And I was like, this is what's so great about horror movies. Is even within a older kind of classic genre, they're about 30, they're in different decades, but still, there's such variety.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different types of horror movies, and so many different styles, and just different ways to be crazy, and I think that's one of the great things about it. So
definitely. White Zombie and then this one. Well, okay. Well, I want to talk about that movie and what it means to you and that sort of thing, but there's something that we do here on the show with everybody, and I know you said you've listened to some episodes. I don't know if you've ever heard us play around with the Classic 5, but...
I have.
Excellent. Well, I have my deck of cards here, and for listeners who don't know, the Classic 5 is a card game that we play here on Monster Kid Radio. I've got a deck of cards here, and each one of these cards has a question about monster movies. This or that, which one do you prefer, that kind of thing. There are no wrong answers, and I know I just called it a game, but really, it's a conversation starter. Karen, are you ready to play the Classic 5?
Yes.
All right, here we go. Card number 1 right off the top. Who else, in your opinion, should have or could have played a werewolf?
Oh, geez. Could have or should have played a werewolf.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I knew you were going to pull a really tough one on me. Actually, no. This is kind of, I'm going to go with Aquanetta.
Ooh.
She,
okay. Bonus points for Karen right here. That's awesome.
I feel like, she never really had the career she should have. I've only seen the Captive Wild Women and whatever the sequel is. I'm drawing a blank on the name. Like, I really thought the camera loved her. And I just read a thing recently that she was supposed to be in one of the Mummy movies as one of the mummies, but that she had to back out of it. And so I was like, I bet she'd been a great werewolf, too. And it's kind of, it was kind of typecasting because, she's a woman who turns into a gorilla. She could turn into a wolf. She probably could have had a lot more range than that, but just because of that, I'm going to go with Aquanetta.
So listeners, for those of you keeping score at home, Karen is slowly making her way to the top of my list of favorite guests to have on Monster Kid Radio. She loves Robert E. Howard, and she just name-dropped Captive Wild Woman, and Jungle Woman is the other one, just casually in the conversation. Those movies don't get enough attention and respect, so awesome. So cool. All right, card number 2. Which do you prefer, the Twilight Zone or the Outer Limits?
I have to say Twilight Zone. I have not seen enough Outer Limits. The episodes I've seen have been good, but I totally grew up with the Twilight Zone. I've seen many of them many times, and so The Outer Limits is more something I still need to learn more about.
Okay, all right. Sounds good. Card number 3. What is your favorite mummy movie?
Oh, I was actually thinking about this. The Aquanetta thing came up because of this. And I believe it is The Mummy's Ghost. It's the one that's set in what's kind of like Louisiana. I don't know if they say that. But they keep talking about the swamps, and there's some like Cajun accents. And it's the mummy in that one is the woman who played Mrs. Olsen in the Folgers commercials, only she's young and glamorous. And it's very bizarre. So I don't even remember why I ever saw that movie, but it's, yeah. And I want to say it's The Mummy's Ghost, a sequel to The Mummy's Curse, but I'm afraid I might be flipping them.
I always get them mixed up because there's Curse, Ghost, Hand, and Tomb, I believe, right?
Right. The mummy titles are not very distinctive yet.
And they came one right after the other, so there was no break in between either. Two of them came out in the same year, so it's got to, to keep them straight. But okay, no, there is one that takes place like in the swampy area, that sort of thing.
Yes, that is my favorite. And I have a whole New Orleans thing too, which I have many weird sidelines. But
right on. Okay, card number 4. They met Frankenstein, Dracula, the Invisible Man, a mummy. What other monsters should Abbott and Costello have met in the movies?
Oh boy. They did meet the creature?
They did on TV for a second, yeah, but it wasn't really a film. It was like a promo thing.
Okay, yeah, because I would have liked to have seen them interact more with the creature. I think the creature is another that is kind of limited to those few movies and could have expanded a whole lot more.
Sure. All right, card number 5, final card. What classic monster movie needs a prequel?
Needs a prequel? I'm going to say Cat People. I've got a real animal theme here. Maybe it's...
Ooh.
But, yeah.
I think that's come up before. That's awesome. Yeah, I would love to know, like,
more
Irina's background. Yeah.
One of those smoky werewolf villages, but explaining more about the origins of the cat people before they came to America. I'd like to see that.
No, that'd be great. That'd be fun. Well, I know the Classic 5 only has 5 cards, 5 questions, but I'm going to ask a 6th because you know Howard, and I want to ask you.
Oh, yeah.
There hasn't been very many. A few films, a few TV shows, some radio stuff. What's your favorite Howard adaptation?
I'm going to have to go with the original Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. I know that it's very not true to the texts, and this is kind of one of those things that comes up a lot. Some people really hate it because of that, but the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie is the reason that I became a Howard fan. I mean, that was the place I really first encountered Conan, and then by extension, Robert E. Howard. So I do love it. It's campy and goofy, and I really like it a lot. So I have to go with that. What's yours?
What's mine? I love that film, not because of the story or anything, but I feel like the setting, the world, is very representative of what Howard was writing about.
I agree with that.
I really like the environment and just the aesthetic. Yeah, the Conan character probably doesn't hew very close to what Howard was writing, but the world itself felt real. I do like that one. I did just watch the Thriller episode of Pigeons from Hell.
Oh,
and I really adore that. I really like that.
That is a fantastic episode of TV. There should have been a Pigeons of Hell movie in that time period. But
man,
we can't. Where's our time machine? Tell people to do these things.
Let's do it now. I'll start the Kickstarter campaign to raise funds. We know plenty of writers who can write it for us. I know a couple directors.
There we go. I have contacts with those Swedish guys.
Dave, there you go. The people who own the rights. There you go. No, I love Pigeons from Hell. It's one of my favorite stories. I would love to see an adaptation of The Black Stone, though. That's the one I'm waiting for.
Oh, yeah. That would be really interesting. I would be happy to see that.
Yeah. So welcome to the Robert E. Howard Kid podcast. No, just...
Yes, Howard Kid. I like that.
Yeah, Howard Kid. There you go. A Barbarian Kid podcast. Something like that. I think the Cromcast has that field covered pretty well. And they're great, too. Anyway, that was the Classic 5 plus 1.
Excellent.
Dance, baby, dance, come and dance with me. Hear the beat of the pounding sea. Ride, baby, ride, come and ride with me. Let your feet go easy.
What do you make of this?
Where does the other end go?
It dumps into the ocean.
It looks exactly like the South American Fantigua fish. I hope you can take one alive, Sheriff. I still believe that a human clawed that girl to death.
The Beach Girls and the Monster, starring Jon Hall, Sue Casey, and the glamorous Watusi dancing girls from Hollywood's famed Whiskey A Go-Go nightclub. Music by Frank Sinatra Jr.
You got a monster in the surf.
Chicks, do you have a problem? You won't have after you meet the monster on the beach. If you see this ghoul, play it cool. Beauties in bikinis, laughing, singing, surfing, sinning. Beach party lovers making hey hey in the moonlight while the monster waits and watches. Yeah. This one will kill you.
We're talking about here the Beach Girls and the Monster, and I've said it before on the show, and I'm going to say it again. There is just something about surf music and monsters that goes oh so well together. I don't know why it works, but it works.
Okay, that was actually one of my big things I wanted to ask you is I don't know a lot about surf music in general, and I know you're an aficionado, so I would like you to tell me your thoughts about the surf music in Beach Girls and the Monster, because I love it, but I know nothing about surf music. So,
well, I don't know. I mean, I've had people who are more in it than I am when it comes to surf music, try to break it down and explain to me why surf music is so synonymous with especially 50s and 60s monster movies. I still don't get it myself. I don't know what the connection is or why it works so well. I just love it. The music in this film, it's fun. It's not, the Del Airs and the Zombie Stomp, by no means. It's Frank Sinatra Jr. So it's a little different.
Okay.
I think the music is adequate, but I probably don't need to hear those songs anymore because I keep playing the same songs over and over again. The Dance Baby Dance song I don't need to hear ever again.
That is actually something that totally cracks me up about this movie. There's a point where someone says, like, oh, and this is that new music, that new song that I'm like, yeah, it is the new song. Everybody's playing it because it appears over and over and over again. But it's sort of by the end of the movie, I've grown fond of it. But yeah.
Yeah.
But it is.
It is. And I'm sorry, listeners, because by the time you hear this in this episode, you've already heard the trailer for the film, and it's right there in the trailer. So you've heard it too, listeners.
Oh, good. So they will know what we're talking about, yes.
Yeah. I do kind of appreciate the other song, though, with the lion puppet, Kingsley the Lion. And there's just something goofy and charming about that. It doesn't feel like it fits this film at all. But it's just so goofy and fun. It feels very Mickey Mouse Club to me, which is not the vibe you're going for in a monster movie, but...
So, yes, I have a few factoids about that.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Actually, I don't know if you knew this, but Walker Edmiston, who plays the sculptor friend, the lead guy's best friend, he was apparently a TV children's show host, and so he made that lion was one of his puppets. And he co-wrote the song.
Okay.
And apparently the lead actor wrote his little love ballad song, too. So that makes me feel there's sort of DIY quality that I enjoy about that. However, I did look up that old Video Watchdog review, and they call that song astonishingly insensitive.
Yeah.
Because, just a scene earlier, the girl who sings it, 2 scenes earlier was like almost legitimately broken up about the death of her friend, more so than you sometimes see in these movies where they actually are shocked and upset and there's repercussions. They talk about the girl's parents and all this stuff. But then, there they are like joking around on the beach about the monster and do this goofy song. And you're like, yeah, this is really astonishingly insensitive.
It truly is. And when you mentioned this on Facebook, I'm like, okay, somebody finally talk about this movie with me. I haven't actually sat down to watch this movie start to finish, as a dedicated kind of viewer in a while. And I had forgotten just how blatant this song talks about the victims of this monster. It's like, come on, guys. It's such an odd note.
Oh, it is. But yeah, there's something. Yeah, you don't really. When I've seen it, I didn't really know what was going to happen, and I really appreciated that. It pulls off some weird stuff that just comes out of nowhere, and then even when they just stop to watch surf footage, that's not narratively great. Maybe it's not maybe very narratively effective, but it's fun.
Yeah,
and it just gives you that kind of sense of. This is kind of one of those anything goes movies,
yes,
in a way.
Mm-hmm. So while I did kind of forget about how insensitive that song is, one person I did not forget in this movie, one thing about this movie I didn't forget at all was the director / actor / director of photography, Jon Hall, who did a lot of stuff. I mean, he had one heck of a career, including some movies that are relevant to Monster Kid Radio, like Cult of the Cobra, a couple of the Invisible Man films. This was the last film he acted in.
Oh, really?
I mean, he would, yeah, I don't know why, what happened there, what happened in his life that led him to being involved in this film, and then the next year direct one more movie, the only other film he directed, which was The Navy versus the Night Monsters. He was involved in that somehow, and I don't know how that happened, what that journey was to get from working for Universal in the 40s to this. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a really good question.
So if any listeners have any ideas or thoughts on that, I'd love to hear it. Because I love him in The Invisible Agent. I love that movie a lot. But that's clearly better, a more prestige picture than The Beach Girls and the Monster. Anyway.
Yeah.
He's really only the big name of note here, too. I think most of the cast, I guess there's the children's host guy, but I don't really know if much more of the cast kind of stood out to me.
A lot of them, there are a lot of people who have lengthy credits, but they're not people you've ever heard of. So, like, is it Sue Casey, who plays the wife, the vampy second wife? She's got an IMDb page that goes on for miles. I mean, she was just guest starred in every TV show ever made. I mean, so she clearly had a long working career, but she never became someone that people really heard of. Never made that leap to a familiar name.
Sure.
And I feel like a lot of the people in this movie, there are a few of them that they did a couple of movies in the 60s and were never heard of again. And then there are also a handful. The TV show host, he also had a whole series of appearing on all the cop shows in the 70s and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there isn't that thing where you see it and you're like, oh, there's that one actor that I recognize from this other thing. But they're not bad. I mean, I've certainly seen worse in this kind of film. So they're perfectly serviceable.
Sure.
That sounds damning with faint praise.
One of the co-writers on this, one of the people that worked on this film is Robert Silliphant. And he also wrote The Creeping Terror. So yeah, we've seen worse.
Wow, I haven't seen that in years. I may have to revisit that.
I try to be pretty positive here on the show about every movie that we talk about, but a couple of my dear friends really want to talk about The Creeping Terror with me, and I'm struggling so on that one. But you mentioned Sue Casey. I really liked her in this film. I love that kind of delightfully gold diggerish kind of persona that she's got. There's just something, I mean, she's a bad person, sure, but there's just something kind of delightful about watching her be this wicked stepmother type.
Yes, and she really livens up the film. Mm-hmm. And I feel, in a way, they kind of give her a scene where she they don't really justify her behavior, but they do show that, she is legitimately unhappily married. And that her husband isn't the catch that she thought that he was, and all of these things. They do actually have a scene where they talk about this, where she's like, we've been married for 5 years and nothing's gotten any better.
Sure.
And you're kind of like, well, she should just leave him and not torture him. But, it was the time.
True.
So we can do spoilers here?
Yes, we can.
I do need to talk about the creature.
Yeah, we have to talk about the creature.
Yes, we have to talk about the creature.
I love it. I think it's great.
When I think about this movie, and especially, every time I rewatch it, I'm always kind of surprised that it sort of has some thematic interest to me in the 60s time period, that it was filmed in 1964, wasn't released until 65, but that at that time, it's depicting that very innocent, wholesome 1960s. It's all American, beach fun. It's almost like a Disney movie, except for the murders, So if the creature was just scaring people instead of killing them, I could have seen this on a Saturday matinee easily.
Sure.
It's very wholesome. The youth culture element is there, but it's a very innocent youth culture. So it was sort of predating the troubling youth culture of the 60s with the anti-war movement and the drug culture and all of this societal upheaval.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, that generation gap theme is so strongly prevalent in it. So it's almost as if it's showing that the generation gap between the older generation that lived through the Depression and World War II and sort of built this materially prosperous America is at odds with the people that they did it for. They wanted to do this for their kids. They created this world for their kids, but then the kids have all this freedom, they have this leisure time, they have all these options, and then the older generation is sort of murderously resentful of their freedom. And I just thought that was really interesting because it's not something I would expect to see in a film like this. And I feel like that comes out really strongly with the character of the father that Jon Hall plays. So there you go. That's my...
No, and especially in the scene where he's...
my mini English...
especially in the scene...
Take the girl out of the English class.
Oh, no, not at all. No, and I think maybe we're giving this movie more depth than anybody ever has before because of what it is. But I think you're absolutely right. And it's really demonstrated in the scene in the car where there's three people in the car. There's the son, the father, and Mark. And the father starts laying into the son about, you've missed so much time at the lab. And the son doesn't want to talk in front of Mark, but Mark gets out of the car and they have that conversation about how, I've been working so hard. All I want to do is play. And there's this real demonstration of what you're talking about right here in that scene. And it really kind of shows what the divide is between the generations, between father and son, the different attitudes toward working hard and having what you want and versus living for the day and just doing your thing and enjoying life. That's really interesting, actually. And I think this movie uses a giant rubber monster, or maybe not giant, but a rubber monster to kind of drive that point home.
Yeah. My favorite part in the movie is when it's shortly, I think it's the scene after that where the father tells Vicky, he's like, oh, I just found out, I had this conversation with my son and he prefers a life of play to work. And she says, well, who doesn't?
Right.
And it's like, well, who doesn't? They know that these people have more opportunity to be able to do that. Of course they want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But then he's looking at it as like, well, I sacrificed to give you all of these. He thinks those opportunities should be to lead the life that his father wanted him to lead.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just an elemental conflict. That's just not that easy. And of course, speaking of the monster, I love the fact that it uses its limitations to its advantage, in the fact that, you see the monster and you're like, well, that's a goofy looking sea monster, as so many of them are.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, that's a really fakey looking sea monster. And then it legitimately is a fakey sea monster.
Right.
So it actually writes its limitation into the plot and kind of creates a little more of a drama out of it, instead of it just being, it's a monster, it kills some people, the monster is caught, which is kind of the lowest bar that a movie like this could do.
Mm-hmm.
And it probably would have still been fun, and I probably still would enjoy it. But I feel that it does go, in its own goofy way, a little bit of an extra level, and actually telling a human drama about characters.
Mm-hmm. Which, again...
And I also love the design of the monster.
Oh, I love the monster design, too. I mean, my favorite film of all time is Creature from the Black Lagoon. You give me a monster that goes underwater, let me know he's probably green, and, he swims around, and, I just love that stuff. I adore it. And this monster is so iconic, despite the film he's in, and probably not getting nearly as much screen time as some of the other underwater monster movies had. It's an iconic looking beast, and I'd love to have a little statue of it on my desk, or an action figure to, because that's just amazing. I love the look of it, and it's somewhat articulated. Its eyes actually move in one scene, which is going above and beyond a lot what a lot of these monsters did.
When it's attacking, they also do some photography so that it actually does look menacing, like when the arm and the claw.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see the whole monster at the time. You do see the monster lumbering along, but in some of the attack scenes, that claw is kind of legitimately scary looking, and it claws at their face. So yeah, I feel like it is again more effective than it has almost any right to be.
Yeah.
There's also the great thing about the father being this fish expert, and which of course probably inspired him. But they have this whole conversation about, well, we don't know any fish that have like footprints. They're looking at these claw marks and footprints in the sand, and they don't know of any fish that. They're like, no fish have claw feet walking on this. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I love the design of it, and you're right, they do work it into the story itself, which makes it sells it even more. The father being the killer, it's kind of Scooby-Dooey in that it's really not a monster, it's not supernatural, it's just some guy in a mask or a suit in this case, but it's still a satisfying monster and a satisfying conclusion, I feel like, where it's revealed that it is the dad, but it's not just we handcuff him and take him away. There's also a chase scene at the end as well, while he's wearing most of the suit, which is just fantastic.
And throughout the movie, he does have moments where he does seem just slightly unstable, but it's made reasonable by the fact, especially since he's so upset with, he's fighting with his wife and he has all this stuff going on. So when I first saw it, I really didn't expect it to be him. But when it was him, they had laid enough of a groundwork that you're like, oh, sure, he really was unhinged. So, I'm making a real case that this is this is a seriously underestimated film, which largely I do think it's just fun because of the music and the monster and the dancing girl.
Well, and see, that's one of the things, though, about a lot of these movies, though, is that we can enjoy them on a few different levels. And yeah, it's a fun little low-budget monster romp, and there's a lot of shots of girls in bikinis. There's a lot of it. They even kind of poke fun at it a little bit in one of the campfire scenes with the guy with the googly glasses, staring over and looking at one girl's chest, and the eyes fall out, and there's a sound effect, and he looks at the person next to him, and the same thing happens again. I mean, they really do exploit it as much as they can for 1965. But it's more than just that, too. If you want to, you can kind of take a step back, and like you said, it's really a battle of the generations. And, just talking with you about it, I'm thinking, okay, somebody could remake this with millennials being the, potentially.
Yes,
and I mean, it really...
Could. Honestly.
Not that I'm pro-remake, but,
No, well, sometimes. But yeah, and that's true. That is, I think one of the real joys of, even the kind of cheesy B movies is, some of them are, just pretty bad, but a lot more of them actually are saying something in their own unique ways, in their own kind of oddly imaginative ways. And I feel like this is an oddly imaginative film. That it does have these touches and moments. And I'd like that campfire scene. There is a lot of sort of goofy humor that is actually fairly effective again. So,
And maybe that's what drew Jon Hall to the project. Who knows? I would love to know more about how he got involved with it. But you would have to have somebody who is older to play that father character and to be able to demonstrate the slippage between reality and maybe having that break. Potentially, they never flat out say, he went crazy, put on a suit and started killing people. But it does get questioned quite a bit. What do you think? Do you think he did slip, or was it all conscious? Did he decide to do it?
It's such a fine line. It's really, the one just shades into the other. So I'm not really sure what I think about that. But in a way, I mean, there had to have been a lot of premeditation to this. I mean, there was a lot of planning and setup that went into this. But at the same time, he just did kind of snap, but went about it in a very methodical, rational kind of way to actually get away with it as much as he did and plan it as well as he did. Because he's clearly also where people are at different times and who's around, and there is a lot of thought process behind the mayhem.
I guess he would have to have spent time making the suits. That's not just something you have in the back of the closet,
Yeah. Now, you'd almost think that would have been a reason why the sculptor friend would have been even more of a red herring because he was an artist and, he could have knocked together a monster suit probably easier. But
you said you remember the first time you saw this. When you first saw it, did you think it was Mark?
I think I thought to the end that it was.
Okay.
I guess when they found the suit at that point, I probably did think it was Mark. I mean, I think that would have been kind of the obvious thing. So I didn't, and especially that it being this sort of establishment figure seems a little bit subversive.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I expected it to go in that direction. And so I was kind of glad that it did, that it had, I think it added that extra depth. Whereas if it had just been, one of the kids or, the crazy beatnik or whoever, it would have been kind of more, oh, okay, it's just kind of a regular film. But I think that does give it to an extra level. And I don't think I really expected that, especially from a fairly straight film in the early 60s, that they would go that route and have the sort of the mouthpiece for the establishment turn out to be the psychotic killer. So that was a pleasant surprise.
When I first saw it, I remember being surprised to find out it was the dad in a costume. I really did not expect that. It really came out of the blue for me.
Yeah.
So I guess the movie was effective. They did what they were trying to do, and they tricked us all.
Oh, those pesky kids. Yeah, there is a Scooby-Doo quality about it.
There is.
I do agree, yes.
But there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like that's just fine. Scooby-Doo's been around for how long, and it's still going. So, I mean, there's something to be said for that formula. I just love the vision, the image of Jon Hall wearing that costume, save for the hands and the headpiece, driving down the street, driving away at night. There's just something about that I just adore, that whole sequence. I just love looking at him driving as the monster.
It's also very odd in his, very at the time modern house, too. They're in kind of the bar and the family room there, and they're, at the time, very contemporary house, and Mark is wrestling with the creature. It's sort of, it's a strange juxtaposition, definitely.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I like to try to do when we talk about movies here on the show is I like to go look at the old press kits and things like that. There was a small press book put together for this film. Not a lot in terms of suggestions to promote the movie, just little articles that you're supposed to submit to your local newspaper to get them to run about Frank Sinatra's music or Jon Hall being in the film, as well as a production list of cast and crew, that sort of thing. I would love to have heard some of these things, though. It does look like that at one point there were actual TV trailers sent out, and I would love to see that, or a radio ad sent out, and I would love to hear what the radio ad sounded like for this film. Because the dialogue, the script that is showing here, I'm trying to imagine somebody in that 1965 surf movie voice. The whole gang is on its way to see Beach Girls and the Monsters. Just want to... yeah, hip chicks are shaking in the knees because there's a monster on the beach. So cats, if you see this ghost, play it cool. Okay.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be an odd movie to promote because it is this kind of surf romp. Mm-hmm. With the Dance Baby Dance, but then, and then they have that kind of monster music that kind of follows the monster around.
Which I love.
It's an odd film, yeah. It's an odd film, and I just feel like the commercials would have been very odd as well.
Yeah, and I wonder which way they would have gone. Would they have sold it as a monster movie, or would they have sold it as a surf movie? Because there is a lot of surf stock footage in this thing.
Yes.
Almost too much.
Almost too much?
I feel like, yeah. But then I wasn't, in that surf culture, so I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think there's maybe a little too much surf footage, and of course you know that the surf footage was filmed by an actor who appears in the movie. So again, it's got that kind of homespun quality, handcrafted. And let me see, what was his name? Dale Davis, who apparently was a big surf filmmaker. Mm-hmm. Second only to the Endless Summer guys, according to a handful of sources on the internet.
Oh, wow.
But he appears as I believe he's the last victim there in the beach when Tom finds him.
Okay.
Towards the end of the movie. So he's one of the surf gang.
Okay.
And he supplied the surf footage that they watch. But it is, the whole movie comes to a halt while they just watch surf footage for, I don't know, it was about 10 minutes.
Right.
And they're like, wow, And he's like, I can't wait to show my girlfriend this. It'll blow her mind. And you're like, okay.
Like, okay.
And it's not entirely clear if Richard actually surfs. I mean, I assume he does, but we never really see him surfing. He just is hanging around the beach and swimming in the pool with his girlfriend. Like I always feel like he's just kind of hanging around with the surfers. But I don't remember if the movie actually establishes that or not, that he actually does surf himself, or if he's just an aficionado.
Yeah, I don't remember. I guess I'll have to go back and rewatch it. Darn. I did read in a few different places that a lot of the surf footage was actually in color in the film.
I've heard that as well.
So you've got this black and white monster movie going, and then goes straight to color for that, and then back again, which would have, I think, felt really odd to me if I was watching it and didn't know that was coming. Like, that's an odd gimmick choice.
Yes, I think that, quite possibly. But maybe if the surf stuff was a big draw at the time, it's hard to kind of put myself into that frame of mind. But
yeah,
it was the time that it was, so.
Yeah, and then that's one of the things that sometimes I struggle with when it comes to a lot of these classic films, whether it's horror or not, is that having not been in that culture at that time, I may not get all the in-jokes or all the intentions, but then I love to go back and try to investigate that and then try to educate myself and become more aware of it. I love my surf music. I love my instrumental surf music a lot. I know very little about the surf culture. So I couldn't, I don't know what to say there, So we've talked about the monster, we talked about the music a little bit, and I love the idea that it's a generational thing. Is there anything else about the movie that you could say you think to maybe get people to give it another chance or watch it in the first place? It's
a surprisingly fun movie. I've seen, various movies that are not exactly in the surf horror genre, but kind of that comedic youth culture, like The Ghost of Dragstrip Hollow.
Right.
Things like that, which are fine movies. Mm-hmm. But I haven't wanted to revisit them as much as I do The Beach Girls and the Monster. I mean, I've probably seen this movie at least 4 times, which is kind of excessive. I've certainly seen a lot of dumber movies more times, so it's not entirely crazy, but there are a lot of these movies that are kind of trying to hit a little bit of horror, a little bit of comedy, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. That, they're fun, and I've enjoyed them, but I didn't feel they had quite as much to offer. And whereas this one, I feel did. And the other thing about it, every time I've seen it, I forget that it's in black and white. I always think it's going to be in color. And when I just rewatched it, it happened again. So I feel like it really feels like a color film. It really feels like it's got this energy and kind of fun to it.
Interesting.
Monster killings. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. So
it's got it all. It's got energy, it's got music, and monsters killing people.
And monster killing. Evil claws and generational unk. Yeah. So, but I feel like it wears better than some of the other films of its time. Kind of come off a little, in the end they're a little bit gimmicky.
Sure.
But this one I never feel that way about.
I love it. It's a fun film, and some of the surf stuff does slow it down a little bit for me, but the movie's pretty short as it is. It's barely over an hour long.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not really a huge investment of time, and it is fun, and it doesn't slow down at all. As much as I love things like Horror at Party Beach, and I do love Horror at Party Beach, I feel like there's a few spots in there where it does slow down a little bit, whereas with this one, it never really seems to drag. I mean, even when we've got Mark kind of freaking out over the sculpture he's working on of Vicky, it's still an engaging scene. It's not boring. I mean, never did I feel bored watching the movie, even during the surf stuff.
Oh, yeah, and he had done a sculpture of the dead girl. He'd sculpted her as a topless mermaid, and they have this whole conversation about, I'm sure her parents would love this sculpture, and I'm like, well, mate, but she's a topless mermaid. Was she topless when she posed? Sorry, I'm going to be a little PG-13 here, but it's very odd. So there's yeah. Mark the sculptor is an odd red herring. Sorry, I just had to throw that in there. I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah.
What was going on with this Mark?
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, it is a very short film, and there is a lot of oddity in it, so I guess it has that in its favor.
And they could have fleshed it out a little bit more. They could have talked more about Mark's accident, but I do appreciate that they don't get too bogged down in stuff that doesn't really matter too much.
Yeah.
We know enough about Mark and his relationship with everybody and why he's there, and we just know enough to enjoy the movie and have a good time. So I take it back. I don't want to remake this movie. Just watch this one again.
Yes. Great idea.
So that is The Beach Girls and the Monster. It's been released under a couple of different titles, but I think you can find it usually as Beach Girls and the Monster. I believe it's on DVD right now, but it may be close to going out of print. I only say that because when that happens, Amazon usually jacks the price up quite a bit. And last I checked, the price for this on Amazon was pretty high on disc. So something to keep in mind. But I was able to stream it. It's available on various streaming services as well. So it's not that hard to find. I mean, I recommend it. Give it another watch. It's a good one. Karen and I both think you should. And you don't want to argue with a couple of Robert E. Howard fans.
By the surfboard, I rule.
Right. So here's the other reason why Karen's been in my orbit, or on my radar, I guess is probably the best way to put it. A while back, I posted on Facebook that I was looking for a particular kind of story that I had just got done reading. I even forget what it was, but one of the novels that I was reading, it was about Halloween and kids enjoying Halloween and movies and monsters and things like that. And she offered to send me a copy of her book, The Jack-O-Lantern Box. If you follow me on Facebook, just the other day I quoted part of it on there because there's this book speaks to me, man.
Oh.
This book is so good. I'm sure a lot of it was autobiographical. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. But that lends to the authenticity of it. And it's about two girls, two best friends in school, and then one of the girls has an older sister as well. And it's set in the, I'm guessing like mid-70s is when it's set.
Yep, mid-70s, yeah.
And it's taking place in the month of October. The Jack-O-Lantern Box is the box of Halloween decorations that one family stores all year round until it's time for Halloween. And one of the girls convinces their mother it's time to bring it down, who seems very resistant to bring it down because it's always too early, but she finally succeeds, and they get the Jack-O-Lantern Box down and all the decorations out, and everything that kind of goes into Halloween is here. Getting ready for trick-or-treating, doing Halloween stuff in school, trying to decide what you're going to wear as your costume, scaring yourself with local ghost stories and urban legends that may or may not be true. It's all here, and granted, I wasn't a little girl in the 70s, enjoying Halloween, but I still found so much of myself in here, and I cannot recommend this book enough. It's really, really good. Karen, thank you so much for sending this to me. I've read it, and I adore it.
Well, that's very nice to hear. In many ways, it was a very non-commercial project. It falls through a lot of cracks. It doesn't really fit a lot of things. I've never really been sure how to promote it. And it is very specific, but that was my intent in it, so I kind of basically wrote it for myself out of love because I really wanted to sort of preserve that sense. I've been talking with some friends about the Little House on the Prairie books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the weird time gap between when she wrote them in the 30s and 40s based on her growing up in the 1800s. And how much times would have changed before she actually wrote it. And I was like, well, growing up in the 70s is almost that, but not quite technically, but in certain ways almost seems as far away as that. Mm-hmm. And then I started thinking, well, I could do a Little House on the Prairie book, but about growing up in the 70s, during the Charlie's Angels era, which seems weird. And then the more I thought about it, there is a lot about it that is kind of a bygone time. Mm-hmm. And once I hit on that as kind of a thought that I could just be very specific about what life was like for us at that time and how I felt about things at that time, then I had a hook to put on all the things I wanted to write about the stuff we did as Halloween when I was a kid. So the characters aren't entirely autobiographical, aren't entirely based totally on people, but the stuff that we did, the actual activities, are totally based on fact. And my sister did, in fact, create Johnny the Hangman, who's one of these urban legends, totally off the cuff when I was a little girl. And my best friend and I did play this Johnny the Hangman game where we took turns being the killer and being the victim for several Halloweens after that. So that was actually, and I've always thought, that's a weird little detail that was fun. it's very nice to hear that someone who didn't have the same experience, even though it is, because that was my hope, is that people who loved Halloween would be able to see that in it. Because yes, we are totally Halloween people here.
Oh yeah,
so
certainly. Now, this episode that we're recording right now isn't going to go out until November, which means Halloween is come and gone. But listeners, I know as Monster Kids, you love all things Halloween all year round. And I would recommend reading this book just to kind of hold on to that Halloween feeling a little bit longer, even though the trick-or-treaters are gone for the year. There's just some magic in here. And the Johnny the Hangman stuff, I'm going to be honest with you here, Karen. I actually went online and Googled that because I thought it felt so real. It felt like, okay, that's an urban legend that I probably should have known as a kid. So how cool is that? I mean, there's this sense of realism, verisimilitude here. I don't review books here a lot on the show. As a writer myself, I know what goes into creating and birthing this kind of stuff. But if I didn't know you and I was just kind of talking about this book in a review sense, it just feels so real. The details really make the book. And I adore it. I can't gush enough about it, man. I really love this book.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to get all verklempt. It is very special to me because it was a strange time in history. And it was I also wanted to write a little bit about that weird period in time because it was sort of post the big Monster Kid craze.
Sure.
And it was before the big horror boom on VHS. Mm-hmm. So we had such limited access to things. And I think it's hard for people now to remember even how limited our access was to things. And that was true. At the time that I was the age of the character in the book, we had, by that point, like 4 TV channels, and that was amazing. We used to only have one. Because it was a small town, you weren't that close to any of the bigger cities. And so you really only could see horror movies around Halloween. Every once in a while they would show a show on Saturday afternoons and you could catch like Tarantula or something and you'd get really lucky. But you just couldn't get this stuff. But then on the other hand, we had all this free, unsupervised free time. We had tons of free time in which to do crazy things and to do imaginative things. So you had too much of one thing, not enough of another. And I feel sometimes the young people today, it's flipped. They have so much more access to things, but they have so much less free time. But I feel like, there's a lot of them making the best out of that too, and finding what works and finding pathways for their imagination.
Sure.
So things have changed, but it makes me hopeful for the future. But yeah, that was something that we were able to do where you had such limited access to things that you could still take what was there and make something out of it. So anyway, yeah.
And that's one of my favorite things about Halloween, actually, is that we get to, we had to create a lot of this stuff. I think I'm probably just a bit younger than you in terms of like when just a little bit. But, I also kind of went through a lot of that where, we had to make a lot of our own costumes. We didn't have the big Halloween stores to go to like they do now.
Right.
There might be one place that had some Halloween decorations and things up, but that was about it. You had to, I have very distinct memories of pulling out the construction paper and drawing skeletons on it with white, white colored pencils and crayons. I have very distinct memories of cutting out bats and snakes and things like that, which the characters in this book do. And it's just like, man, I would have hung out with those girls, man, as a kid. That's the picture on the cover of the book.
Oh, yes.
Is that the decoration or the pumpkin with the cat inside that's referenced in the book?
Yes. I actually...
Excellent.
I had to buy this one on eBay. The one I had as a child disappeared. I have no idea what happened to it. But I found this on eBay, and I'm like, that is exactly what that cat was like. And you open it up, and the cat pops up out of the pumpkin. It's a real prized possession.
How cool is that? How cool is that? I hope it didn't set you back too far, because reclaiming your childhood on eBay can be expensive.
Yes. One of the other things that was a big inspiration that appears in the book, and I fictionalized, there was a company called Dennison. Are you familiar with this? They made those paper Halloween decorations and costumes in the 1920s. Okay. And they put out every year a little catalog of them called a bogey book. and you can buy facsimiles of them, and they're these beautiful illustrations. So it's one of those things, again, of like different generations having different ways of doing this. So like someone in the 70s looking back on the 20s, and now in the 2010s, we're looking back in the 70s. So it's just kind of that continuity of the chain of Halloween through the ages. So that was one of the inspirations for the book.
You know, I'm looking right now, and I mean, some of these Denison books, they go back to the 20s, like you said, which means they're in the public domain and people have scanned them and put them online. Oh, this is great. I love that retro Halloween vibe. These are awesome.
Oh, some of them are just gorgeous. And I really don't know what the costumes would look like in real life, but the illustrations, the drawings are just beautiful. Very evocative. Yes. So I want to give a little shout out to the Denisons.
Oh, these are great.
Who apparently sold all sorts of paper decorations for all the different holidays. But I think Halloween had to have been a big one for them because these boogie books they did for several years. And most of their other decorations were just kind of like a general catalog with Thanksgiving and Easter and Christmas and all those things. So
I was to say, I'm looking at the Halloween one, and there's like one page for Thanksgiving in the back. The rest of it's all Halloween stuff. And there's that cat design, man, that familiar scaredy cat face. Yep. Oh man, this is awesome. Best podcasting ever where I'm sitting here looking at pictures on the internet. This is great. So it's available on Amazon. It's also available on Lulu. This was independently published. I'll make sure there's links to both places for people to pick this book up for themselves. It's a quick read. I have read it once through all the way, and I started rereading it again just because I wanted to be ready when I talked to Karen this time. Just under 120 pages. Real short, breezy read, but man, it's fun. Thank you for sending it to me.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure. I've been calling it, yes, it's a Halloween stocking stuffer. It's small, it's light. It is a quick read, but yeah, I do feel I'm proud of it.
Right on. Karen, I've loved chatting with you here on the show. This has been awesome to have a new voice to throw into the mix. I'm sure there are other movies that we can talk about, and, you know, if I can find a way to talk about Howard, you're going to be like at the top of the list of people I call. I know Alan Trump and I usually find a way to bring up Robert E. Howard in a show just because we both love Howard, but you and I set the record for talking about it right at the top of the show, so...
Awesome. Yes.
So the award that you won for your blog, for the blog post over on an Underwood number 5, I'll make sure there's a link to that. But you also have a website of your own, which is, it's referenced in the back of the book here, octoberzine.blogspot.com.
Yes. Where I usually just kind of talk about random things, Marvel movies. I haven't been doing as much with it in the last few years as I should. But there's a whole archive of weird horror movie reviews, and a whole lot of stuff about Bollywood movies. So if you're interested in that, that's another of my strange sidelines. So
wow. Is that the best place to find you online these days? As they go to the blog first?
Probably. Yeah, because there's links to various, to different things. So it's some of my different projects. There's links there, and yeah.
Okay. Well, again, I appreciate this quite a bit. Thank you so much. We'll have you back on the show down the line. And I know this is going out after Halloween, but since it's before Halloween now, I hope you have a happy Halloween, Karen.
Oh, you too. Yes. Well, it's been a real honor to be on the show. And I hope everyone has a very Halloweeny year.
So I realized that during the conversation with Karen, I mentioned that I quoted her book, The Jack-o'-lantern Box, on Facebook, but I didn't tell you guys and gals listening right now what that quote was. So I'm going to go ahead and read that to you right now. You're putting a lot of work into Halloween, she said. Jessie shrugged. It's like when we talked about how Santa Claus is really everybody, she said. We have to do the same thing to make it Halloween. I don't know what it is about those sentences, or what are there, like 3 sentences there, 4 sentences, but they hit me, and they hit me hard and make me realize that that's part of what I do. I mean, this speaks to me, except I do it all year round here on the podcast and just living life because I can't give up my monster movies. Even if it's a movie like The Beach Girls and The Monster, man, I love this movie. It is so just, I don't know, the more you kind of look at it and peel back the layers, like Karen said, there's a lot here. The theme that she proposed that exists in this film, fascinating. And warrants another view, I think. Now, you can see this movie. I know I mentioned during the conversation that Amazon has this for an incredibly high price. In fact, as of this recording right now, you can get one of the standalone DVD releases of this film for $239.99. And while I would love for you to follow the link in the show notes to buy a copy of that for that amount, because I get a portion of that, I don't think you really should, actually. So I also included some other links to Amazon where you can buy the movie from other DVD distributors. There is a copy of it you can get as a standalone for $12.99. And for some reason or other, there is a copy of it being released as a double feature with the movie The Incredible Petrified World. And even more odd, you can get it as part of a double feature with the 1983 film Prisoners of the Lost Universe, which happens to star Richard Hatch. It's a bizarre movie that it's outside of the Monster Kid Radio purview, so I'm not going to talk about it here. However, because Karen mentioned Conan, I am going to play the trailer for Conan the Barbarian here in a second after I say thank you to Karen for being part of the show this week. Really appreciate it. Check out her website at octoberzine.blogspot.com. There'll be a link in the show notes. Thanks again, Karen.
Warrior. Thief, conqueror, king, Conan.
Let us take the world by the throat and make it give us what we desire.
Conan the Barbarian. Rated R. Now playing at a theater near you.
This is Jack Curtis, director of the film The Flesh Eaters. If you can't stand the sight of flesh being stripped from a human body, please leave the room.
There will be a 10-second countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
There's something inside me! He's eating its way out!
These things want flesh, any kind of flesh. And once they sense it, they lead their ways to anything that comes between them and their meat.
No one can escape.
The Flesh Eaters.
Within the violent waters that cover this earth comes a mighty motion picture destined to be remembered above all others. Starring John Carradine as the scientist who was deceived by his own fantastic experiments.
Hey, what happened?
I think something's buckling.
Hey! Hey! Can you hear me?
This story of a group of scientists who penetrate the depths of a mysterious ocean brings you underwater thrills and breathtaking excitement as they travel mile after eerie mile through the black waters to ultimately discover the incredible petrified world. See women struggle for survival as they become lost in a world of incredible danger. Caverns explode violently as underground volcanoes unleash their tremendous fury. Suspense, chills, terror, excitement beyond compare. Never has a motion picture captured the amazing story, the gigantic spectacle, the staggering force of the incredible petrified world.
So, our schedule is kind of messed up.
It's all your fault.
No, it's not.
Yes,
it's Halloween. It's your fault. It's your Halloween stuff.
No, Halloween cannot be at fault. Halloween doesn't make mistakes.
It's because you planned a trip the day after Halloween. I do not know what you were thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. So because of that, this is going to be an abbreviated feedback section because we're recording early.
Well, we're recording early, but it's after midnight and we live in the second floor in a condo.
Yeah.
So
keep it down.
We're trying to keep quiet.
You're too loud. You're always so loud.
So it is like that crunch part of Halloween. I had a thing on Saturday, and you had movies on Saturday.
Yes.
Fed a non-vegetarian dish. Very sick.
I don't want to think about that. I'm not letting that impact the experience.
Yes.
But if I remember the name of the Chinese/Vietnamese place, I'm never going to go there. Well, I'm not going to go there anyway, but anyway.
Yeah.
It didn't ruin the day.
Good.
Didn't ruin the day.
Good.
I got Phantom of the Opera, live organ. So cool.
Yeah.
So cool. And then hanging out with Chris and Dominique and talking about future plans regarding writing projects and such. And then went to go see The Mask, that movie, the Canadian monster movie, whatever.
Okay.
Mind-blowingly awesome.
Yay!
It was amazing. Dominique and I were talking afterwards, and we really want to talk to Brian and Gwen about maybe getting that into the Lovecraft Film Festival next year, because it's really good.
Good.
So
you should stop moving around and making noise.
Sorry. I'll just mute it out on the recording.
Right. So it's Monday.
Well, how was your party?
Oh, good. It was smaller this year, so more talking, more kind of laid back, which I prefer.
Right on.
So we did all that. Sorry, it's after midnight. I have to go to work tomorrow. I had to work today, but I had to try to make my contribution to the work snacks thing tonight, because tomorrow night we're going to be playing board games with Dominique, and I'm really excited about that. And Wednesday is when I have to bring my treats in. Total fail.
Yeah.
Total fail.
Yeah.
Man, I wish I could just opt out. It's such a stressful thing.
But we have the hammerhead shark costume.
I know, it's so awesome.
You cannot call in sick that day.
Oh,
you
no.
cannot opt out.
I meant opting out of the snacks part. I'm too stressed out already, so I have to try to... Well, I'm not stressed. I don't want to deal with it anymore.
Well, okay, so the snacks were shark teeth.
Right.
Bugles covered with chocolate and such. So white chocolate to make them look like teeth. What happens if you go into work tomorrow and you send an email out to everybody saying that you found out that they are not gluten-free, which is true, they're not.
Yeah, but I think the expectation would be find something else to bring.
Is there anything else that we can just pick up pre-made?
I mean, so we bought those Brazzi bites, and they're somewhat circular, and I was thinking maybe they're whale eyeballs. I don't know. Because the other thing is that my melting pot, it doesn't temper the chocolate. It's not going to look good on there. But the potential option we came up with, it doesn't matter if it doesn't look pretty, because then you just douse them in powdered sugar. Which,
the bugles potentially have gluten, and we're covering them with sugar, so neither one of us can eat them.
Oh, that's true. Can you test one for me?
I had that one that you covered with white chocolate already, and I don't know. We'll talk more about it, but
all right.
Yeah, there's always a little bit of stress that comes with Halloween. There always is.
Yeah.
And by the time people hear this, the party will have come and gone at your work, so we can't even ask the listeners for advice.
Yes. Well, in the meantime, I'll be an awesome hammerhead shark.
Oh, yeah. That hammerhead costume is amazing. Amazing. Anyway, so yeah, we've got all that, and we've got the virtual crash happening on Wednesday, so I'm trying to get everything done by Tuesday night, because Wednesday is the crash, and then Thursday I fly out.
Yes.
So there's all of that.
And the packing. And
the packing. We did get our ballots done in Oregon. You can mail in your ballots, so if you can vote, please vote.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's done, but there's just a lot to get done. So I appreciate you taking the time to do an email. We're just going to do one. We only have one email sitting here, and it's an important one, and I'll tell you why after you read it.
All right. Hi, Derek.
Hi.
Thank you so much for talking about The Vampire Bat. I love this movie. It's my second favorite Dwight Fry performance. I think Herman is a wonderful character, and it is so nice to hear someone else speak well of a role that most people overlook. I also found it really funny that you and Brenda saw the remake of The Haunting on your first date. I now believe that great relationships are built from seeing a bad movie on the first date, though I don't hate this movie. Bob and I saw The Ruins on our first date, so if a couple will go out again after seeing a bad movie, it must make a great relationship in the future. Feel better, and we'll see you at Monster Bash. From Melanie.
So that's Melanie, who is really good friends with the horror host Nosferatu, who works with Bob Tesla. Really good friends with her. Really good friends.
Yay. Well, it's just nice to hear from a lady every once in a while. A woman.
Well, I want to say Vampire Bat, awesome. And I've been thinking a lot about that movie ever since I did the episode and then edited it. It's just a solid little movie. It is fantastic. It is dynamite.
Yay.
It's so cool. So cool.
I feel like because it's late, I've said yay many times.
It's going to make for a good episode. Okay. The Haunting. We finished The Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah.
I'm going to agree with a lot of people online who've said that it did not stick the landing, the ending.
I think so too, the more I think about it. Like, I understand the landing.
I get it.
Isn't the landing the show deserved?
So I think it's a lousy adaptation of The Haunting.
We've already talked about that.
I know, but first-time listeners.
Really?
Yeah,
You're rigid. You can't see outside of what it used to be.
I'm a haunting hipster is what I'm saying.
Okay. Get off my lawn.
I still think the one episode in the funeral home that only had like 5 camera cuts for the entire thing, cameras moving all over the place, was the pinnacle. I just feel like it just kind of lost its way a little bit at the end and had to wrap up a few things pretty quickly.
Yes, it did. Like, wrapping some things up was very quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think through, like, they're driving there. They show up at different time frames. It was almost like it tried to cram the time tricks that it's been using throughout for every single person into one episode.
Yeah, I agree. I am glad that it ended. It was a definitive ending. There's not going to be a second season. It was a one and done deal, and I appreciate that.
Can we talk about how random it is that she's haunted by the ghost of an affair?
Spoilers.
It so doesn't fit with anything else.
That's true. Everything else is
ghosts.
Ghosts, like literal spirits of deceased people.
Right. But this is just the spirit of a bad decision.
That keeps lifting his drink to her as she walks by and sees
toasts her. Yes.
Yeah.
I thought, like, maybe she wanted a relationship with him, but he died, or something like weird.
Yeah,
like that, but
really bizarre.
No, it was just the spirit of a bad decision.
Yeah, it's not like the one guy was haunted by his wife, his estranged wife or whatever.
No.
It was all...
and this is different from the sort of reprocessing that's happening while they're
yeah, it's just weird.
Under a spell. Yeah, this was just serious. Like, it's late, and I keep saying like.
It was like when they did this
like thing, like yay, sleepy excitement. So Luke isn't haunted by, like, there I go again, isn't haunted by all the drugs he's taken. There aren't, like, there's not a drug dealer nodding his head at him every time he walks by. She's the only one who's haunted by a terrible decision.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well.
All right.
I'm glad we watched it, though.
Yes, but I feel as if we haven't seen the end of the show, that we have another episode to watch, because that ending just didn't satisfy.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. So I'm glad this is the email we're doing. On my computer, you're sitting at my computer right now. On my computer, there is a Facebook. Will you go to that real quick?
Sure.
That just happened for Melanie. Monster Kid Parents.
Yes. Aww.
What's the name? I forgot.
Oh, Guinevere.
Guinevere.
Yes. Right. And I'm just imagining how pregnant she was when she wrote that email.
Yeah, she was actually at Monster Bash, and, well, they were pregnant, and they made a point to go into the hotel room and make sure there's going to be room for a crib, because they are not missing Monster Bash. And I think she was born today, actually, as of this recording.
Let's see. So, 14 hours ago, checked into the hospital.
Yep.
Yeah,
So,
12 hours ago, picture where she's trying to smile. And 11 hours ago, baby.
well, congratulations
Yes.
to Melanie and Bob.
Congratulations.
You guys are awesome, and I know you're going to steer this kid right when it comes to all things monsters.
Okay, can we talk about how the second comment I can see here is, she doesn't look like a lizard? Good job not having a lizard, baby.
I want to end our feedback section on that.
All right.
Good job not having a lizard,
baby.
Famous Monsters of Hollywood magazine names it Shock Award winner, the Monster of Piedras Blancas. The Monster of Piedras Blancas, the world's most shocking monster, stalks its unsuspecting prey, feasts its eyes on the next victim to writhe in its slimy arms. The screen's most nightmarish beast. A claw-fingered, scaly-skinned, half-human crustacean, turning a lonely lighthouse village into a frenzied bedlam of blood-curdling horror. Never have you known such cringing terror, such drawn by love to the forbidden cove of the sea monster, then trapped in a torment of unendurable suspense. In the screen monsterama of 1,000 incredible... See the movie named the most brain-paralyzing shock story of them all, The Monster of Piedras Blancas.
He's the goingest ghost you've ever met. This ghost of Dragstrip Hollow. He's got the Hot Rodders Vavoomin and the Hepcats Zazoomin.
She your chick? Well, I'd like to think so. You know, she prefers hot rods instead of hot romances.
That's because it's easier to handle cars.
This chick does all right with romance, too. But nothing stops this pirate's bird, who learned his tricks from the ghost of Dragstrip Hollow. Anybody want to kiss a duck?
There's a perfectly rational explanation for all this.
Hepcats and hot rodders, they're all alive to the jive.
That brings us to the end of the show this week. I think it's going to be a little bit shorter than the last few episodes have been, and part of that's because I worked so hard to get so many things done in October and wanted to really give you guys and gals a lot of classic horror material and content, and I was prepping for the virtual crash, which I think went off really, really well. Big thanks to Joseph Schultz for making the graphics that I used before some of the movies. That was really cool for him to do that. And thank you to everybody that joined us on Rabbit TV. I think it was a success, so much so that I'm going to be doing some virtual crashes or movie nights or open screenings or something down the line. I had a blast doing it and I want to do it again. I think it's probably going to become a Halloween tradition, but I'm not going to wait till Halloween to do another screening like that, I'll keep you guys and gals posted. And of course, I'll mention it in the show notes over at monsterkidradio.net, where you can see this trailer.
You are listening to the sound of a completely new screen experience. A startling new kind of excitement. As 20th Century Fox plunges you into the most incredible adventure that man could ever achieve. To make a motion picture that crosses a new frontier may seem impossible today. Outer space, the depths of the sea, the bowels of the earth, the past, the future, all have been subjects for the camera. But now, a film called Fantastic Voyage has broken through in an unexpected direction to create an adventure of astonishing suspense and beauty. One of the miracles of the universe. Its vital news story sweeps down from the sky. Then it drops the bottom out of the world you know and understand. As a beleaguered nation desperate for survival launches a journey you can never erase from your memory.
We need you for security purposes, Mr. Grant. They know they failed to kill Benish. Security thinks they'll try again, first chance they get.
A woman has no place on a mission of this kind.
I insist on taking my technician.
You'll take along who I assign.
Don't tell me who I'm going to work with. 4 men and a beautiful girl, off on a fantastic voyage, actually entering inside the human body, exploring an unknown universe, unknown dangers.
They're tightening. I can't breathe.
24 seconds left.
After that, you're in danger of attack.
Come on.
It's sheer suicide for all of us.
You are there with them, sharing a breakthrough in motion pictures.
He's gone.
If you thought it was too late to discover something entirely new on the screen, Fantastic Voyage will be a stunning experience. For you are going where no man or camera has ventured before. And when you come out, you may never look at yourself in the same way again.
Give me your widest beam. Full power.
That's the trailer to the movie that we're going to be talking about next week on the show. Now, I'm not going to be home by the time that episode comes out, which I'm going to do everything I can to make sure it comes out on time next week. But I did get with Scott Morris a few weeks back and recorded about the film Fantastic Voyage, and I can't wait to share that conversation with you guys and gals. So stay tuned for that. Now, if you have any comments about Fantastic Voyage, The Beach Girls and the Monster, or anything else we've talked about here on the show, please feel free to call it in to 503-479-5657. That's 503-479-5MKR. Or you can email me at monsterkidradio@gmail.com. Of course, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and we do have a Patreon page. And I'm sorry, I know I'm behind. Last month I did not do the Patreon patron roll call or update the website. I'll be doing that between this episode and next. My apologies, patrons who were expecting to hear your name. It'll be next week, I promise. One thing I don't want to forget, though, one thing that's already been set up and running is the Frankenstein Poll that we're doing here on Monster Kid Radio. Steve Turek and I are running that. Go over to tinyurl.com/FrankPoll. You'll find a link to that in the show notes as well. We are asking you to tell us about your favorite Frankenstein movies, as well as the Frankenstein movies that you consider the best. The deadline for this is November 10th. So go fill that out. Watch the trailer for Fantastic Voyage, and remember that Monster Kid Radio is a registered service mark of Monster Kid Radio LLC. All original content of Monster Kid Radio by Monster Kid Radio LLC is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 3.0 Unported license. Before I sign off, I do want to remind you that The Beach Girls and the Monster is almost like a Disney movie, except for the murders. Big thanks to the Undead Bureaucrats for letting us play their song More Fumes from the album Expedition Earth, the undeadbureaucrats.bandcamp.com, or follow the link in the show notes. Talk to everybody next week. Ciao.